Well, I think so. I mean, this is a military situation now, as of the 7th of October, when the terrorists invaded Israel and inflicted terrible casualties on them. And I think the UN Secretary General has been suckered really into misrepresenting the facts, which is reprehensibly liable for such a figure to be doing that. The truth is that Israel has stated its aim throughout this conflict from the 7th, and it is to get rid of Hamas, get rid of them, and to change the status quo in the Gaza Strip by the means that are available to them on the ground. And as a result of that, every strike that they will make as a modern, sophisticated military will have been tempered against international law. And that is to say that any anticipated collateral damage will have been measured against the military objective, and it has to be proportional. And given what their objective is, I think you would have to agree that it has been.
Mm. Major, we've been talking about a ground invasion now for several days, and it hasn't taken place as of yet. Do you think that can be a successful military operation when it comes to retrieving hostages safely and getting rid of Hamas? I mean, you talk about Israel's aims there. That is their aims, to do both of those things. But can they be successful in those aims, especially when we're talking about Hamas, which is an ideology, actually, rather than just a terrorist group? And also that so many of the key players aren't even in Gaza. They're elsewhere in the Middle East, many of them in Qatar. There
are a number of issues there. The first thing is, you're quite right, you cannot kill an ideology with a bullet. But you can stop a current not tension, but invasion on your people. You can arrest that fairly quickly. War does not come without its risks. Does that put the hostages at risk? Of course it does. But the uncomfortable truth is the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. And the overall strategic military objective is to clear out Hamas. And then they can look beyond that and discuss how they settle the situation in Gaza and beyond.
You mentioned earlier collateral damage. It's an awful phrase. Let's be honest. It's about civilians dying. There seems to be a sense now, and I'm not trying to justify this either way for anyone who wants to get angry at me, but there seems to be a sense that there must be no collateral damage in war. But that's just not the reality, is it?
War is not a risk-free endeavour, I'm afraid. And there will be tears and bloodshed. Blood and treasure will be ceded on both sides. But I think what needs to happen, not likely to, but what needs to happen is Hamas need to put their weapons down, and publicly state that, let the hostages go, and then proper dialogue and communication can start.
Yeah, but on the basis that is almost impossible to achieve, isn't it? Because, I mean, we're talking about a group which is embedded within civilians, using civilians as human shields. They're putting rocket launchers next to hospitals and kindergartens and all this sort of thing. So they're not going to walk away from this. So at what point does a response become non-proportionate from Israel? They can't obliterate the Gaza Strip.
Providing they work within international law, and everything that I've seen suggests that they are, because of their military strategic objective is proportional to doing what they need to do. That comes with bloodshed. That is the uncomfortable reality of war.
Who's to blame for that? Is that, and I put you on the spot, but is that Hamas's fault? In the sense that whatever the background to this, whatever, as Guterres is talking about, the 58 years of occupational history, whatever all that is, Hamas launched this massacre in Israel. Do they need to hold responsibility then for what happens to Gazan civilians? 100%.
They absolutely do. And I think where the There has been masses of misrepresentation, indeed disinformation. It is a cheap propaganda ploy to simply say that there are loads of dead civilians. That was always going to be the case. That is true, but it still sits within the framework of international law when it comes to war. What they then go on and do is measure it against the crude body count of Israelis against Palestinians. And I'm afraid, to the untrained eye, that's a very simple equation to understand. But that does not set the bar of acceptance within international law when it comes to war.